Hey, do you like spiders? Of course not. Those shits are fucking gross. But what if they were funny anime girls with a big ass? That's the question we're gonna be looking into on this installment of 3-episode rule. When we take a look at the new anime, So I'm a Spider, So What? So go ahead and grab yourself a drink and some bug spray, and let's just get into it. Alright, so before we start to dissect the show, let me just give you a fair warning. I am going to be going over some of the minor plot points of the series. Up to this point, it's just the first 3 episodes, so it's not anything major, but if you don't want anything spoiled for you, you just want a yes or no verdict, I've left the time code in the description, as well as you should see the chapters down here. Just go ahead and hop to that point for my final thoughts. But with that out of the way, let's get into our first category, which is going to be the story opens up the same way every anime does, at high school. But wait, there's more, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's this big explosion, and the next thing you know, we are in another isekai. The twist this time is that our main character is turned into this puny-ass little spider who's really weak instead of the typical overpowered, blessed by God, harem king. Spider-san, it's the main character of this one, by the way. Right away, as soon as she's born, she has to fight her way out of her egg and fend herself from all of her cannibalistic new siblings, as well as the monstrous other inhabitants of this cave that she finds herself in. The scaling for the show is much smaller with a bigger focus on the comedy, but I've got to say the setup so far with that basic part in it doesn't really pull me in. Now, Spider-san as our MC is pretty likable, but she really dances on that line of really high energy and good-spirited versus so annoying, I want to die. And while she dances that line just well enough to keep me on her side, that beat in itself isn't enough to really hook me into the story. What did hook me, however, was later in the episode when we cut away from her in the cave and we go to this social gathering for these noble elites who are all, it's anime, they're teenagers, right? But regardless, as soon as we start talking to them, we get this feeling that, oh, hey, these are her classmates who have also been reincarnated, but they seem to have been reincarnated in a more traditional way. Apart from the previous class's top bitch, Faye, who is now essentially a glorified pet. Now this hooked me for one major reason, and that's when did they reincarnate? Because from what I can tell, they've been living these lives, not unlike Katarina Klaus from My Life as a Villainess a couple of seasons back, which if you haven't seen, blanket recommendation, please go check it out, it was a great series. But from what we can tell, these classmates have lived these lives from birth. They still remember their life in Japan, and they haven't necessarily found all of their classmates. But from what we can tell, they're all in prosperous positions in multiple countries, and even their teacher was reincarnated at the exact same time as them. So she's now their same age. So if that's the case, why is our main character just being born now? So hopefully they focus on that question and really dive into what makes the main character different from the rest. Like, why is the main character so different from the others? Why did it take her so long to reincarnate? And why then is it as a spider in a non-human class? Interesting as well is that none of the other characters so far have really mentioned anything about a system at play, a world system, a battle system, because when the main character gets into this world, pretty quickly she starts to hear a voice and figure out skills and level up and go about those types of things. But we haven't heard these humanoid classmates talk about it, apart from a little bit in episode 3. Now that part in the episode boils down to the girl from the religious country saying that she heard God's voice when she was practicing, telling her to level up skills. And everyone looks at her like she's weird, like she's talking to God, she's a little, If she's talking like that and everyone's brushing her off, then that means they're not interacting with the system. But at the same time, at the end of the episode, Faye tells one of the other main characters to look at her status. So they're somewhat aware of it, but they're really not establishing it at all, whereas it's a huge deal for the main character. So is that leading into why she's different from them? Is that just a fluke in the writing? These are the kind of questions I need answered. Why did they reincarnate? How prominent is the world system / battle system? Who blew up the school? And can they do anything about it? These are the questions that if the series shifts focus and shows us answers to and builds their story around, they could keep me hooked. But if the story stays where it's at now, where it's, you know, a low grade spider humor and power fantasy with a slightly unique setup, that's not gonna keep me. So that's the story. But now let's take a look at the characters that bring that story to life. So far, there aren't a lot of characters to discuss, at least not deeply. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. First up is our main character, Kumiko. She obviously has been reincarnated as a spider, but in her previous life, she spent most of her time playing games, ignoring social interactions, and really just being a borderline NEET. She does mention that she was able to drag herself to school and not be a complete shut-in, but while there, we did see that she got bullied and teased. So she was kind of a nobody, a wallflower, but that video game knowledge really has come in handy because now that she has a basic understanding of how games and systems work, she is able to figure out a good way to min-max a great spider build and figure out how to survive in this insane situation that she's been thrust into. And she isn't a insane gaming god, but she can piece a few things together. And what's really funny is even in, you know, the start of the first episode, when she hears that she can learn skills, she's like, man, I wish I had that appraisal skill. That's always busted in shows. And so she gets the appraisal skill, and plot twist, it's low level. So when she's like, hey, what is that? They're like, that's a rock. And she's like, fuck. So she's real fun, and she has a great sense of willpower. She's able to force herself into these intense life or death battles. She recovers pretty quickly, even in them, when she gets like her eye blown out initially, and she recoups, and she dips and dives into spider things. And she levels up, and she's funny, and she cracks jokes, and she's very energetic and very over the top, which is a real split from how she seems to have been when she was alive. Initially, she just wants to have an easy life and camp away and hide like she did previously. But as soon as that's revealed to not really be an option to her because people can burn spider webs, then she starts focusing on leveling up and going a more traditional power fantasy grindy way. But even then, it's not a quick process. So hopefully between that and where she started, she can start to grow as a person as well, because currently as it stands, you know, hopefully she either expands her comedic chops or her character, because there's not a whole lot of depth to both. It's kind of middle of the road. While I do like her, and I found myself liking her a lot more when I rewatched the series to prepare for this video, I don't know if she can carry the series on her own, which is why they're probably cutting between her and the rest of the cast. But like I said, my enjoyment of her switched based on my viewing, so maybe it's just dependent on your mood, and maybe you'll have a different experience with it. Faerun, or Faye as the series calls her, is one of the other main character's classmates who got reincarnated. This is the one who became the kind of floppy-eared baby earth dragon who's now a pet. Back in her previous life, she was kind of the class top bitch. She bullied and teased the main character. In the series so far, she's also the one who's really shown the most depth. Perhaps it's the split between how she lived before and how she lives now, but she's taken this time to reflect and look deeper. Why did she become a pet? Is it bad karma? Was the way she lived before wrong? Is she doing any better now? She really dives into these deeper questions, and that's what has drawn me to the character. Honestly, at this point, she's kind of my favorite. So with her having that deeper introspection, as well as she like teases and she'll crack jokes, but when the going gets rough, she jumps in, she helps her friends, and seemingly is one of the strongest members of their little group. So with all of that, she's easily kind of the best character right now. She's the one who's shown the most depth, the most multi-sided. She's also an adorable little earth dragon with floppy ears versus a creepy spider, you know? So with all that being said for her, I really do hope the series focuses more on her and her journey as kind of a reflection or even a dual main character to Kumiko, Spider-Son. At the very least, I will like to see when the two cross paths and how they interact given their new forms and new experiences. The other main character to talk about would be Schlein Zagan Analyte, or what whatever his fucking name is. He's the other classmate of the main character who is reincarnated that we focus on. He was born as the 4th prince of a royal family. His older brother is like the great hero, and he really looks up to him and admires him, again reinforcing that they grew up in these lives. Like, he looks at him like an older brother. Like, he doesn't view him as like, oh yeah, cool dude I met a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, no. That's an older brother admiration complex through and through. In the 3rd episode, he shows that he's a bit stronger and more well-versed than some of his other classmates, but not by much. And apart from that, he's the owner of Faye in a kind of weird, creepy way that they're just brushing over. But I don't know, man, he's bland as shit, and really there's nothing left to say on him. There are quite a few extra characters, ranging from, does this count as a trap, to totally not a future villain, but they are so one-dimensional that Doodlebob should be suing them for copyright infringement, and I stand by the fact that Faye is the only one with enough personality to spread across a full slice of bread. Alright, so that's the crew. How do they look? So far, the show hasn't really had anything stand out in this category. Now, the human world is nice and colorful and somewhat vibrant, as you expect any old fantasy world isekai to be, and the spider's cave is dark and dingy and creepy, apart from these floating ambient blue lights that are never really explained. The biggest thing to note is probably the use of 3D CG throughout the anime. Now, to be open, traditionally, I haven't really been a fan of 3D CG in anime. Typically because when it's used, it looks clunky and it clashes with the other 2D assets. And don't even get me started on Berserk. But in recent years, more studios have been showing what you can do with their 3D assets and blending them seamlessly into the series. Now, shows like Demon Slayer did this really well, and Beastars continues to prove just how good 3D CG animes can be. So where does this show fall? I'd say the main character's character model is actually pretty good, and the expressions and the emotions that they are able to get through the use of it really do match the character and bring a lot to the series. Most of the time, when the main character goes for a joke or tries to do something comedic, the comedy lands because of the animation and the way that they present her. Now, I can't say the same for the monsters she fights. Now, the monsters seem like they are designed fine. They're, you know, decent models, but the compositing on them leaves something to be desired, even when you're comparing it to another 3D asset like the main character. When they have their fights and they're going up against one another, you can clearly tell that she's a better model and more time went into her and that she blends better into the scene. Now, what's even worse is when these monsters attack or get attacked and there's 3D liquid effects like poison barf in episode 1 or the spouts of blood in episode 2. Those effects look really bad and do not mesh well at all, especially when you go from a wide shot that's the 3D CG and you see the blood blasting out of the snake's neck, and then you go into a close shot and you see the blood splatter in 2D up close, and it looks completely different and they don't blend at all. Let me be clear, this is not Berserk levels bad, okay? But the difference is noticeable. So if this is something that is important to you, I would be remiss in leaving it out right now. All that being said, the camera work, the understanding of space, the dynamics in movement, and especially the movement during action scenes, all of that is well done. The character designs, while nothing phenomenal, do offer you a cast of pretty anime people to look at. So I can't really fault them there either. A quick note on the OP, it gives us a look into potential further story events and a lot of action, and it's animated really well. So the hints there at the larger story is rather enticing. And that's pretty much everything there is to say on how the show looks. But how does it sound? The show's music is pretty standard. There aren't really any standout tracks, but it does a good job of matching the mood with a lot of laid back tracks and sound bites to match the main character as she lazes about in her spider's web. When the action starts, the music does kick up, but it never really is a track that leaves an impression on me or really gets me fired up. It's just enough that's kind of like video game, like, hey, there's an enemy somewhere near here, you know? Like it's just enough, just a little bit of like, ooh, I should pay attention, you know? But again, nothing stand out. It's fine. The OP is an okay track, really, nothing to note. It's fine, it services its job, but the ED makes me want to rip out my own eardrums and play something on them so that I can remember what music is supposed to sound like. I know that it was meant as a joke, but dear God, does that ED hurt my fucking ears. Music aside, I think easily the best sound quality of the show comes from its Foley. Every environment, every stone, every little sound, which if you're unfamiliar with Foley, Foley is like the sound of life. Like when you watch a movie and someone opens a car door and you hear it, that sound wasn't originally on camera. They went in, they put in a little sound clip of a car door opening, and then they blended it so that you didn't notice. That's what Foley is. In this anime, they've done a really good job of it. The sound of water on a cave wall, but really the sound of the main character's little spider legs click-clacking away is all really well done. They say that good Foley and good sound editing is when you don't even notice it. And I didn't notice this until my second viewing through, so a tip of the cap to the Foley sound crew. And with that, that's everything to say on sound. But maybe there's something a little out of reach for us that we should talk about as well. For any isekai, I think the main intangible quality to it is whether or not it makes you want to go and live in the world that it has presented you with. Now, there are some series that build their story around making you not want to go to where the characters ended up. Those are kind of few and far between and not worth mentioning here. The main question is, in this story that's supposed to be funny and upbeat and light, do I want to go to that world? I really don't have an answer, because clearly the world of the spider in the cave having to eat gross monster meat and fight for your life, I don't want to do that shit. I'm happy to live in modern society where I don't have to outrun cheetahs on my way to the bus every day. Like, I don't want to be in the food chain. That sucks balls. So what's the other side? Well, we have seen the story split into the other set of characters who are the old classmates, and they're all nobility and kind of, they're experiencing the best life has to offer. And even then, it looks pretty middle road. Like, we haven't seen any systems that we could easily exploit that could offer us good power. So there's not really any good enticing reason to go to that world. So as far as the intangibles for this series are concerned, do I want to go to that world? No. Does that mean it doesn't really have an intangible factor giving it a boost? Yeah, which is really a shame, because that's typically one of the best parts of isekai, is the world and making you love it and want to go there. But for this isekai in particular, I can't give it points in that category. It's a bit hard to decide how I feel on the show in total at this point, mainly because it really feels like it's just getting started. That's probably because they keep splitting each episode between two groups, and so essentially the story progress is being cut in half. I do like the main character. I find her charming. If not annoying at times, but I must say the voice actress has done a really good job of bringing that character to life. She is vibrant and sprightly and overly energetic, funny and charming and endearing to a good extent. She really dances that line of cute versus annoying, and the voice actress has made that very clear in her performance. The world building right now is pretty weak, and the side characters are really boring and lack personality apart from Faye. There also isn't really a clear villain right now, apart from just basic survival and trying to grow through life. Now, I don't want to hold all of this against the series because, as I said, it does still feel like it's just getting started, but it's 3 episodes. This is typically when you are supposed to hook your audience. It is a pretty good production. The value's there, and there are some mysteries running in the background of the series that can be enticing to you. I do find the main character charming, but the side character is weak and bland. So the story as a whole is a mixed bag. And while I do want to recommend more Crunchyroll shows, I do want to see more originals be made and more series adapted, I just cannot give this series with full-hearted blanket recommendations. If, like me, you find the main character to be charming and funny and likable, you're willing to watch more of her, then please do continue watching the show and following along. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see how it goes as it expands. And according to light novel readers, it gets pretty good. So I'm willing to see that. But if you do not like the main character, if you find her annoying, which I think is going to be the make or break for this series, at this point, I don't recommend you tough it out. There are simply too many other really good shows this season. We're honestly spoiled for choice. So don't waste your time suffering through this if you're not liking it at this point. I feel bad not being able to give it a full blanket recommendation, but that's just the honesty here. They ain't sponsoring me, right? Like, I don't have to be kind to them. If you're digging it so far, keep going. If you're watching it going, maybe it'll get better, maybe not. So you can go ahead and drop that shit now. So that's it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel to grow. It puts us further in the algorithm, brings in new people. At this point, the most people who have viewed my content was the last 3 episodes were on Jujutsu Kaisen, and that's because you sick perverts were looking for Jujutsu Kaisen Rule 34 on YouTube. I find it hilarious. Thank you for the views, but please do get help. That aside, subscribe, like the video, hit that little bell that's gonna let you know anytime I post. If you want more updates on me, what's going on, what I'm doing, when I'm gonna say go live on Twitch, which hey, we just hit affiliate, thank you so much. Why don't you come by for a follow? We'll get a little live interaction goodness. And as that continues to grow, it'll be nice to have you there growing with us. Now, you can also figure out when I'm going live there or when I'm gonna be posting here by following me on Twitter. That's going to let you know all the updates and everything that I am doing. And all these links, of course, are in the description down below. But while you're down there, drop a comment. Let me know. Are you going to be continuing with this series? What show is airing this season that's your favorite? Should I check it out? Maybe I'm already watching it. If you let me know, we can have a fun little conversation about it. But that's going to be it for me. I am Frog Dad. I love all of you. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please stay weird, and I will see you next time.
Yeah, about there, I guess. Oh, yeah, hit the mine. Yeah, fuck you, dude. Yo, with the napalm, too. Yo, if I scorch him out of 100 health and there's one move. Yeah! Yeah, boy! Nice. Oh, the drill boat blew up, too. Yo, did I just get, like, a twofer?
I think you just won.
Hey, these are the plays.